Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Kwantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances to Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktim Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 4th day of January 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order. Chapter 29, talks between Narada Muni and King Prachanabarhishata. We're in text number 4. Yada jidrikshan purushaha Yada jidrikshan purushaha Kartsnyena Prakater Gunan Kartsnyena Prakater Gunan Tena Prakater Nava Dvaram Dvihastangri Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti Tatra Manuta Sadviti Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti. Please chant. Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti. Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti. Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti. Glenn. Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti. Yada Jijikshan Purusha Kartsnena Prakate Gunan Navadvaram Dvihastangri Tatra Manuta Sadviti. Glenn, can you turn this off and open the door a little bit? I think we'll be safe. Is it okay? Okay. Word by words. Yada, when. Jijikshan, desiring to enjoy. Purushaha, the living entity. Kartsnena, in total. Prakatehe, of material nature. Gunan, the modes. Navadvaram, having 9 gates. Dvi, 2. Hasta, hands. Angri, legs. Tatra, there. Amanuta, he thought. Sadhu, very good. Iti, thus. Translation. When the living entity wants to enjoy the modes of material nature in their totality, he prefers, out of many bodily forms, to accept that body which has 9 gates, 2 hands, and 2 legs. Thus he prefers to become a human being or a demigod. Purport. This is a very nice explanation of how the spiritual being, the part and parcel of Krishna, God, accepts a material body by virtue of his own desires. Accepting 2 hands, 2 legs, and so on, the living entity fully enjoys the modes of material nature. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 7:27, those who know can respond. Ichadvesha samutena dvandvamohena bharata sarvabhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa. O scion of Bard. Some of you may be wondering, have you ever wondered what the word scion means? Descendant. Means descendant. O scion of Bard, Arjun, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. Originally, the living entity is a spiritual being, but when he actually desires to enjoy this material world, he comes down. From this verse, we can understand that the living entity first accepts a body that is human in form, but gradually, due to his degraded activities, he falls into lower forms of life, into the animal, plant, and aquatic forms. By the gradual process of evolution, the living entity again attains the body of a human being and is given another chance to get out of the process of transmigration. If he again misses his chance in the human form to understand his position, he is again placed in the cycle of birth and death in various types of bodies. The desire of the living entity to come into the material world is not very difficult to understand. Although one may be born in a family of Aryans, where there are restrictions against meat-eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex, still, one may want to enjoy these forbidden things. There is always someone who wants to go to a prostitute for illicit sex, to a hotel to eat meat and drink wine, or to a gambling club to enjoy so-called sports. All these propensities are already within the hearts of the living entities. Loke vivayamisha madhyaseva nityahi jantor. Some living entities can check the desire to enjoy these abominable activities, but others cannot, and consequently fall down to a degraded platform. The more one desires a degraded life within his heart, the more he falls down to occupy different forms of abominable existence. This is the process of transmigration and evolution. A particular type of animal may have a strong tendency to enjoy one kind of sense enjoyment, but in the human form one can enjoy all the senses. The human form has the facility to utilize all the senses for gratification. Unless one is properly trained, he becomes a victim of the modes of material nature, as confirmed by the Bhagavad Gita 3:27. I'll say, you say. Prakate kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankadavamuratma kartaham iti manyate. And now I'm going to switch over to the Revised Translation. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. As soon as one desires to enjoy his senses, he puts himself under the control of material energy and automatically or mechanically is placed into the cycle of birth and death in various life forms. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So some of you may recall that this whole section of the Bhagavatam that we're reading now kind of began when this subsection of the whole allegory, when the super soul in the form of the old unknown friend approached the reborn Puranjan, the wife of King Malayadvaja Vidarbhi, and introduced himself as our old, don't you remember me as your old friend? And in those purports, Prabhupada describes in one of the most detailed and graphic sections of his books how the living entity falls into the material world. So here we have a statement of that acceptance. Because Narada Muni is explaining to Pachanabarishat the whole allegory. He's outlining it now. And it's important to understand how we got into this situation, so that by reversing the process we can get out. That's actually the principle. So here's it very explicitly: when the living entity wants to enjoy the modes of material nature in their totality. So that decision, that turning toward the material energy and rejecting Krishna, is the essential mistake we made, if you will. The original sin, you might call it. And Prabhupada, as he often does, he quotes this verse from the end of the seventh chapter, exactly describing that. Itcha dvesha samutena. So the itcha and the dvesha, these are like desire and hate, or desire and abhorrence. In this context, itcha means the desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, which means the desire to enjoy the material energy, because you can't be a competitor of Krishna in the spiritual world. And dvesha means not wanting to serve Krishna. And from that, that original turning from Krishna and desiring to enjoy separately simultaneously arises dvandva moha. Dvandva moha is the delusion of duality. This is good, this is bad, this is enjoyable, I reject this. This is the duality, it's only in the material world. Because everything in the spiritual world is all blissful. There's no painful things there. So that duality is here. And so all living beings who are here in the material world have undergone this. They've made the decision, we made the decision, to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. And therefore we are overwhelmed with the sense of duality. And this is what it means to be, but in that other verse that Prabhupada quoted, 327, that bewildered by the false ego. Ahankara vimudhatma. You don't have to be a Sanskrit scholar under that one. Ahankara is the false ego. I am the doer. I am the enjoyer. Ahankara. That literally means I'm in charge. I do it. And being completely, not just Buddhatma, but Vimudhatma, the soul is completely bewildered by the false ego. And he thinks, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But actually material energy is doing it all. You know, we're desiring, the super soul understands desire, the order goes out to the different demigods, the whole operation goes on, and I'm able to pick up this, you know. I'm thinking, I just picked up the glass of water. In one sense I did. But I just desire to pick it up, and then everything follows from that. If my hand is paralyzed, you know, for some reason, I can desire all I want, it's not going to happen. So I'm dependent, we're completely dependent on the material energy to fulfill our desires. And that's not her business. Her business is really to teach us that this is not the place, not the place of our enjoyment. And that we should again turn back to Krishna. That's what her thankless task is. She's the jailer and the reformer. So this is universal, and he's speaking to King Pachanabharshana, but he's speaking to all of us also. This is the principle of how we got here and how we stay here. Prabhupada describes it very distinctly. Originally, every living entity is a spiritual being. We stay spiritual beings, although we forget that and we identify with the material body. But when we actually desire to enjoy this material, we come down. We come down into the material world, and we're controlled by the modes of nature and all of the dualities that we experience. Now, it's interesting that it says here wants to have 2 hands, right? As he describes. We want to have a human form, which has 9 gates, 2 hands, 2 legs, like that. Now, there's another place, famously at the end of the 9th canto, where Prabhupada describes the first body you get when you come down is that of Brahma. Brahma may have 2 hands, but he definitely has more than 2 eyes. But anyway, the idea is that it's basically a human form. And so understanding this, in other words, understanding this, we should be intelligent enough to try to reverse the process and realize, oh, we made a big mistake. It's our fault. We made a big mistake, and now we should try to reform our desires. The whole thing is based on desire. Our whole process of bhakti yoga. Desire means, are we going to still continue to meditate on the endless varieties of material pleasure, and so that we try to enjoy them, you know? And in the human form, as Prabhupada explains, all the senses are enjoyable, practically, you know. The animals, they generally focus on one sense, you know, more than the others. Prabhupada gives an example like the fish. You know, the fish is very much conscious of the mouth. You know, that's his basic enjoyment. So that's why the lures, you know, the tackle, Prabhupada calls it tackle, fishing tackle. You knew that phrase. My father used to take me fishing back when I was a kid, up in upstate New York. And you know, there's 2 ways. You can put a big glob of worms on the hooks, you know, and throw that in. I can never stomach it. I'm just a little kid, you know. But we had these lures. They're designed to catch the attention of the fish. You put them overboard, and they shine and they move, you know, and they become curious and bite it, you know, and and they get caught. So caught by the tongue. The deer. Why do you think these hunters, they learn rudimentary flute playing? Because the deer becomes entranced by that flute sound, and he loses his discrimination. He becomes careless. He's not watching for the hunter or some movement behind the leaves, He's just entranced by the boom, boom, he gets shot, And the elephant, how do you capture an elephant? By the she-elephant, the sex desire. They dig a huge trench in a forest, and they cover it with leaves, and they have this female elephant that's already trained, and she's standing on the other side of the trench. And some big bull elephant comes along and sees the lady elephant starts running, toward him, approaching, boom, he gets caught in there. You can imagine all the screaming and yelling, and the elephant's loud going on. And eventually they pacify him, they catch him, and got another elephant. So Baba once gave a class where he was going through all these. But here we are with all our senses active. You can be attracted by the ears, you can be attracted by the eyes, the genitals, the whole thing, So the process of devotional service involves using those, where appropriate, in the service of Krishna. You use the eyes to see the deities, and the tongue to chant the holy name and taste the prasadam, and the ears to hear, and the hands to clean the temple and do so many other services. So, and even the genitals, in devotee marriage, you can have kids. That's also part of the bona fide service. So it means discipline. It means negating the impulses, the animalistic impulses that we have developed over millions of years in this world, and by use of strengthening the intelligence to control the lower self, directing it toward Krishna, and purifying the senses, so that it comes to a point where the mind and the senses, when the chance for enjoyment comes or the thought comes, you reject it. You don't go down that road. Rather, you try to stay completely engaged in devotional service, so your mind and everything else is in the fire of devotional service, of purification. So there's one, Prabhupada quotes several famous verses here. Now this is the first line of a verse, I think it's in the 11th canto. Loke vavaya mishamadya seva nitya hijantor. This goes through 3 of the 4 of the regular principles. In human society, vivaya, sex, amisha, meat eating, and madhya, intoxication, serving them, engaging in them, is eternally there. That's universal. Without the training, Prabhupada mentions the training of the Vedic culture, the Aryans, one will naturally lean toward these. And you find in every culture in the world, there's some variety of this. There's some rudimentary wine that people make at home or something, some throwing the bones, gambling. There's always something going on like that. And naturally, if there's an opportunity, people lean toward eating meat. As soon as there's some so-called prosperity, then the meat eating goes up in any society. In any country in the world, you can study it. So these are constant lures for one who has no understanding of any of this philosophy. And we can see in the modern culture, they just exaggerate it to the nth degree. Right here in SanDiego, I don't know how many available gambling casinos there are on the little reservations, right? We have the Indians here, you can gamble. And when I was growing up, it was understood this is not good that so many people will gamble. It was a big restriction. You had to go, let's go to Las Vegas, All right, the people are going to go. But there's a big restriction. Of course, people would gamble at home when they, start up, poker games or something. And a confession: when I was 18, 19, I was a bit of a gambler. Somehow I caught the bug, And I'm on Long Island, and Long Island was one of the places where they had these horse races. Not the galloping horses, but they had the little carts. I forget what they call them now. So the guys would get in the carts and run around the track, People would come by the thousands in the evening, And I had a little job, a little paycheck, I was making $1.35 an hour. That was my, you can imagine. I was living at home, so I had some money. And I would go there and get caught up, in the excitement in the crowd and watch the whole thing, And I remember, this sticks in my mind, because now, in the context of understanding how this is really so degrading, and the mode of ignorance becomes very prominent with this, So it was like 8 races or something, and then so before each race it'd be a big crowd going up. They've made their decision, which one they're going to buy. So visualize this. There's like all these lines, moving forward. And in the middle of this big hall, there's one guy, and it remind me like of the homeless guys now, very dirty, and he was just standing there. It looks like a little intoxicated, and everyone was giving him a wide berth. He probably smelled like anything, And you just kind of said, well, let's avoid this guy, and so forth. I don't know how he got there or why he was there, but later on, as I, studied Krishna consciousness, I said, this is kind of the personification of that whole mood of gambling. Mode of ignorance, and just, it was just very, at one point I lost my whole paycheck. I never went back. I got cured from that. But it's an intoxication. It's an addiction. You can get just as addicted to gambling as you can to any drug or alcohol or anything. And now, you can sit at home and, it got so bad, gradually it got more and more available because the state governments knew, we could raise money for education. This is how they were able to get, so corruption takes place even at the government level, so now gambling is everywhere. And so you can get on there and use the internet to gamble, so many ways. So this is there in every human society when there's no training. So this is part of the fall down. And said, this degraded life, it becomes all around you. You can't refuse it. You grow up in it, and naturally you get the bad association. So then Prabhupada quotes this one verse. He doesn't quote the Sanskrit here, or the Bengali, but this is one he would always quote from the Prema Vivarta. And it's a very nice little verse to remember because it personifies how we fall to the spiritual world from the material world, and how we fall from Krishna consciousness even in the material world. In one sense, we're reenacting the fall every day. Every time we let the mind go away from Krishna, So this one says, let's see if I can remember. Krishna bahimukha hoya bhoga vancha kore nikatasta mayatare japati adhari. Very graphic. So he says, bahimukha. That in itself is a wonderful word. Remember, it means literally turning the face away from Krishna. Right? Bahimukha, look to the outside, to the material world. This is our first original sin. And what happens is bhoga vanchakori. We do that because we desire to enjoy sense gratification. Bhoga vanchakori. So what's the result? Nikatasta maya. Maya is right there. She doesn't have to wait. There's no gap for her coming. At that point, she's right there, and she slaps you down. Japati adari. Slaps you down means that she covers over your intelligence, and you become victimized by the material energy. And it's all our fault. This is the big fallacy in the material world, where you blame everyone else for what's happening to you except yourself. That's one of the principles of devotional service. Tattenu kampam susamikshramano bunjana evatmakritam vipakam. That the real devotee, he sees everything as the mercy of the Lord, and and even the things that happen that are difficult in our lives, some disease comes or whatever, you say, oh, this is a result of my past activities. I'm not blaming Krishna, and I'm not blaming anyone else in this material world. Just like this pandemic, it must be China's fault. Right? There's a whole thing. It's China virus. And so many ways. It's the fault of those who are suffering, because of karma. So, Japatiya Dare, and she slaps you down. She covers you over and she pulls you down. It's like a tackle. I always visualize it as like on the football field. You get tackled, and you're pulled down and covered over, and your material life begins. So the obvious remedy for that is turning again toward Krishna. Mukha means face. Bahimukha. Again, not bahimukha, but to Krishna. Bahi means externally. Again, turning the face to Krishna, the attention to Krishna by hearing his name, hearing the words of the Shastra. This is what it means to turn one's attention to Krishna. Everything depends on how you direct your attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. One of Vaishika's nice little sayings. So when you're putting your attention on the objects of the senses, your energy will go there, and we get right in the second chapter. Dhyayato vishayan pungsa sangasteshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodha vijayate. There's a progression, sometimes very quickly. By putting your attention on the objects of the senses with the desire to enjoy them, you develop an attachment. And that attachment can grow into kama. It means like think of an obsession, So you're enjoying, you somehow get, and then inevitably it comes to an end, or there's some blockage or something, and you become frustrated, you become angry, and if you can't express that anger, you become depressed, and some moha, you completely lose your memory and lose your intelligence, and you fall down in the material pool. So what's the solution to that? Next verse, the next verse, Vijay? Raga dvesha vimuktaisthu. Okay, really nice verse. Here's the solution to the problem. Raga dvesha vimuktaisthu vishayan indriyaishchadan. So the first line is there's two lines, makes one line of the verse. It says, even when the senses are moving among their sense objects, one can be vimukta, be free of raga and dvesha, the same word in ichcha dvesha, attachment and aversion. One can be transcendental to attachment and aversion, provided that atma vasya videyatma, one accepts the regulative principles of freedom. That's what we call sadhana bhakti, vaidhi. That's the vaidhi in vaidhi bhakti. Vaidhi is the rules and regulations. You can train the mind so that even if you're in the presence of a very strong allurement for enjoyment, or the other one, a very strong something fearful, that's the dvesha side, you can remain equipoised. Vishayan indriyat atma vasya vidhayatma prasadamatigatma. Atma vasya means self-control. Then you get the mercy of the Lord. Prasadamatigatchiti. And what's the result? Prasade sabadukkanam hanarasopajayate. From getting that grace of the Lord and the spiritual master and the devotees, all of your miseries are destroyed. Prasanna, and you become joyful. Because those rules and regulations have put you back in touch with Krishna. That's the only way to avoid this degrading stairway going down. That famous picture from becoming exposed to the object senses, fixing on them, and the other thing that we just described. So that's the process of devotional service. And this is our Narada Muni. He's coming. He's coming there. He's come here to give this wonderful allegory to Prachana Bharishat and to us, to turn us again toward Krishna, so that we'll accept the process and the principles and the program of bhakti yoga, and we won't be victimized by our own ignorance and by our own tendency to try to enjoy in this world. So Prabhupada's books are filled with this. The Bhagavatam is filled with little, all kinds of lessons like this. From the second chapter, first canto, you find about the one about Dharma. You have the 9 Yogendras, Queen Kunti. The 10th canto, which is Leela, full of philosophy. That 87th chapter is fabulous. There's all those long verses, and each one of them makes a philosophical point. Sometimes combating Mayavad, sometimes combating Mangsa. So much. And Gopi Purana Rana Prabhu, who's wrote those purports solely and wholly, glean all from all the commentators. They all had extensive commentary. So we have a full chance to, and we must expose our intelligence, constantly be studying these books and discussing them, memorizing verses, sharing them. There's nothing so enlivening as sitting down with devotees, reading and sharing realizations and quoting pertinent verses. And then when your intelligence becomes purified, you're strong, you're enthusiastic in your service, and you become able to convince others about Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was just full of that Shakti. As soon as he got a chance to really speak, and share his wisdom with people who were drinking it in, he was so enlivened. You hear some of those early lectures in New York. Some of them were not at the 26 Second Avenue. There were some recordings from his early lectures at that yoga studio even, and he's so excited when he gets to the loft first. There's some there, and then to the 20th. His voice is cracking. He's so excited, to have a good audience after all this time, wandering the streets trying to sell a few books. So that's why devotees take sannyas, those who feel able to, because you have so much great opportunity to preach. You can that's where the real nectar is in Krishna consciousness. So we can do that amongst ourselves. We should, when we say, we should preach, we should also preach to each other and stay strong. And wonderful passages like this and purports really give us a chance to renew our understanding of Krishna consciousness, deepen our faith, and relish a devotee association. What is that? This is right in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is giving the 4 essential verses. And the first one, those who know it, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam pavartate iti madva bhajante mam bhuda bhava samanvita. So why is it so important? It's just like, the 4 essential verses in the Bhagavatam. It's the same. It starts with the same word, aham. Ahameva asameva agre. Krishna is revealing, I am God. In the most important aspect, everything's emanating from me. That's the basically definition of the Supreme Brahman. Everything comes from me. I've created everything. And it's interesting. He has his two perspectives. He says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo. He says, I have produced everything. Sarvam aham sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam bhavad. From me, everything has come. Well, isn't that redundant? Not really, because there's 2 different perspectives. It says from Krishna, I am the source of everything. From our perspective is, well, where did everything come from? Oh, from Krishna. You see? One is passive, one is active. Anyway, so he gives that, and then he immediately goes to the well, what are you going to do about it? This is why this is so essential. Iti madva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvata. Those who are intelligent, iti madva bhajante Buddha, the Buddha, this comes up against, the intelligent, understanding this, they worship me with all their hearts. Not that they say, oh, that's an interesting philosophical point, now let me go on to something else. No, this means you. It means that I'm the source of you, and that your best fortune is in worshiping me. So this is sambandha. The essential part of sambandha is that where does everything come from? What is this world? And then Abhideya comes in right away in the second half of the first verse. And then how? And this is why I brought this up. Matchitta, madgata prana, bodhiyantak parasparam. Katayantastamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. We're all looking for that tushyanti and mamanti, that satisfaction and that positive spiritual pleasure. The essence of the whole thing we're talking about here is kirtan, sankirtan. I'm chanting, you're hearing, I'm chanting. You're chanting, I'm hearing. Right? That's parasparam, back and forth. And most essential of the vibrations, the holy name. But here he says, Katayantastamam nityam, they're speaking so many things, so many beautiful descriptions of Krishna and philosophical points, And if we get together and discuss them, that's what these classes are for, you feel satisfaction and you feel spiritual bliss. And then, where does Krishna come in? What is his response? Tesham satadiyuktanam. To those who are thus linked to me in this way, always serving me with great love and devotion, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. He's in the heart. So he's providing the intelligence and the inspiration for everything we do in Krishna. And then he reiterates that in the last verse, out of love for them, compassion. Think about it. Isn't love and compassion really closely located? They're brothers and sister elements. So Krishna, out of his love and compassion for us, he destroys the darkness of ignorance in our heart with the shining lamp of knowledge. So all that is the result of understanding, okay, Krishna is God, but then acting on it by putting our mind on him in all the ways we've been given, and dedicating our life energy to him. That's in the second verse also. And also discussing amongst ourselves and enjoying that way. This is the enjoyment of the devotee. If it's so important to be able to enter into the kirtan and to feel enlivened by it. That's the safe side, devotion. If we can do that, and we maximize our kirtan, When the kirtan starts, don't think, oh, this is my chance to do in some other service. That's the most important service. Yeah, just like Prabhupada says, the most important service is to hear from the spiritual master. It's such an important service. It's not that is a prelude to your service. That is your essential service. From that, everything grows. So we should take advantage of our, we're so fortunate to have a place to meet here and to, all over the world, devotees. Just imagine you didn't have access to a temple. Many of you are living in the temple. I guess all of you, for me, except me. But to be able to come regularly, see the deities, meet with devotees, take prasadam with devotees. Just imagine all you had was that screen, which millions of devotees now don't because they're locked down. So this is, of course, that's a special access, which is very important. I'm not denigrating it. But there's nothing like a live kirtan, chanting and dancing. So it's, we have a great opportunity and we should take it and listen, really study this nice summary by Narada Muni of all the points of this allegory. Okay, I'm going to read this translation again. Let's see. Yeah. When the living entity wants to enjoy the modes of material nature in their totality, he prefers out of many bodily forms to accept that body which has 9 gates, 2 hands, and 2 legs. Thus he prefers to become a human being or a demigod. And just one final note, we haven't always had that form. Many of us, most of us probably have been through these cycles a long time, going down into those animal species, And we should shudder to think of that. Oh, I don't want that to happen again. Let this be my last birth. At least let me practice Krishna consciousness seriously so I'll have another human birth and I'll be nicely on my way back to Godhead. Because that's real imprisonment. To have your consciousness so covered that you can't understand anything about Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions? Either locally or remotely? I don't know how to... Tapasa, you there?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranams. Okay.
I see 18 people watching us in YouTube right now, but I don't see any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching and hearing, hopefully. Hare Krishna. Balaram has something.
Yeah, I was hearing a lecture recently, and one devotee was saying that there's this idea of like, in health, when we're trying to take care of our health, like a balanced diet. Like if we just eat potatoes or something, I don't know, so it's not very healthy. You need other vegetables, and so he was saying that this, like morning program, for example, it's designed in such a way as to give us a balanced diet, and the whole program of Krishna consciousness, especially living in the temple, it's because it's designed to keep us healthy or help us regain our health by having a balanced diet. Now, of course, certain people, they have everybody has different inclinations, and sometimes devotees, they find it easier to do certain things in Krishna consciousness. They find it more difficult to do other things, like people, they may find it very easy to be very busy, busy in Krishna consciousness, managing things, doing things, being active, and but to chant japa might be difficult, to do other kind of meditative, or I don't know, just sit down and read a book might be difficult or something like that. Whereas some people, they find it easy to read a book or to chant japa, and may find it more difficult to
sounds like Varnashram.
Yeah, be busy. But of course, it seems that there has to be like a balance of those for a devotee, because in other words, to learn how to like both of those, because they're both important for a healthy diet. So maybe you could comment on.
Yeah, that's an important question and comment, and it's a universal issue. Prabhupada designed the movement, as we've learned recently and should know, it developed over time. That I think, was it Maharaj who was telling how at first there was so much Harinam. I don't think there was much book distribution at first. The magazines would go out maybe a little bit, but hours and hours. I mean, like two huge sessions in L.A. That was like a whole period from in 1970, 6 or 8 months. Prabhupada stayed there, and they would go out for hours and hours. 2 sessions, and then come back really late, get up at 7, which was early for many of them. That very early. So, but Prabhupada saw, but then it was pointed out that the devotees weren't so steady. They would get spirited away. And so Prabhupada developed a morning program at that time. At first, it wasn't Bhagavatam; it was Isha Upanishad, but it developed over time. And still, people come with their propensities. They come with their dominant modes of nature that they've developed over time. And, Brahminically inclined, or Kshatri, managerially inclined in business. We had a devotee here. You weren't here. You're the only one who I think remember him. What was his name now? Sunarma, and he got reinitiated. I forgot his name now. But he had the ability to turn everything to money. He was a great. And I mean, he was invaluable in the temple, to keep it going. So Krishna conscious projects, and he would manage it, and he was really good at that. So those type of people are essential. But what I was getting at, there's a certain core, that of activities that really one has to develop and learn how to relish. And chanting is the most basic, chanting of Hare Krishna. Because without a taste for that, you're on very shaky ground. If it's all just a chore and you're trying to finish your rounds and your mind is a million miles away, you become more prone to getting affected by the modes of nature. And mostly you become more prone to offense. Whereas if you really like kirtan, that breaks down so much division that may develop, in a community, where nobody has much money and everyone's living in close quarters. You could imagine, So that core, ability to be in a kirtan and really appreciate, others in that way, and just blow off any developing division that may come conflict. So I would say, and I mean, I've seen. First, top devotees who were given a lot of responsibility in the movement. And then, because of the natural way in which the movement was growing and their responsibility was growing, and time pressure, it encroached upon their sadhana. Just to be able to chant rounds with peace rather than having someone coming with so many emergencies. You can imagine. And these are like people at the top of the scale hierarchy of authority, and so it became critical for the movement that somehow we deal with that. So what I'm saying is there are certain pitfalls, and we have to recognize the core element of our sadhana that we don't want to skimp, and we want to develop a taste for. And that is basically the chanting and the dancing scene, the deities, Shastra. Maybe if you're not reading you can study so much, hearing and discussing and whatever. We used to have a whole culture of putting on plays, which was great, because you really have to get into the roles that are playing. It's all from Krishna book or something, like that, or other. And it's a great way to catch someone's attention. Those who are not into reading so much can really get into a dramatic play in which, Prahlad is being tormented, and he gives his prayers, like that. So that we don't have that anymore, here anyway. So it's, but I would say that, yes, certainly we need to find an engagement where our propensities can be engaged and we can but at the same time, we need to develop and be aware of the importance of developing a taste for our basic sadhana, which is the foundation of our faith and our Krishna consciousness. That would be the way I would understand it. Any other comment, question? Thank you all very much for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.